I still remember the day I met my wife, Emily, like it was yesterday. We were young, in love, and had our whole lives ahead of us. 50 years went by in a blink of an eye. We built a life together, raised 2 beautiful children, and worked hard to save for our golden years. Our 50th wedding anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of our love and commitment to each other. But little did I know, Emily had been hiding a dark secret. A secret that would shatter my world and leave me fighting for my life's savings. It started with small things. Emily would forget to pay bills, or accidentally overdraft our account. I brushed it off as carelessness, but deep down, I knew something was off. I tried to talk to Emily about it, but she just shrugged it off, saying I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the doubts lingered in the back of my mind. Then, on our 50th wedding anniversary, I received a lawsuit notice in the mail. My heart sank as I read the words, "You are being sued for $50,000. I felt like my world was crashing down around me. I looked up to see Emily standing in front of me, a smirk on her face. "You're going to pay for this, John," she said, her voice dripping with malice. I was speechless. My entire life savings, gone. I couldn't believe the woman I loved and trusted could do this to me. I stumbled through the rest of the day in a daze, trying to make sense of it all. But one thing was clear, I had to fight for my life's savings. I couldn't let Emily get away with this. But where do I start? And what secrets was Emily hiding? To be continued. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, trying to process what was happening. I kept replaying the conversation with Emily in my head, wondering how she could be so calm and collected while I was falling apart. I tried to talk to her, to get some answers, but she just shrugged me off, saying I was overreacting. I knew I had to take action, but I didn't know where to start. I decided to call our lawyer, hoping he could give me some advice. But when I reached him, he told me that Emily had already contacted him, and he couldn't represent me because of a conflict of interest. I felt like I was being punched in the gut. How could Emily do this to me? I thought we were a team, that we were in this together. But now it seemed like she was out to destroy me. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to come up with a plan. I knew I had to act fast, before Emily could do any more damage. But every time I thought I had a plan, I realized it wasn't going to work. As the day drew to a close, I realized I was going to have to do this on my own. I was going to have to fight for my life's savings, and for my dignity. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the battle ahead. The next few days were a blur of activity. I spent every waking moment researching, trying to find out what Emily had done with our money. I pored over bank statements, looking for any sign of where the money had gone. But every time I thought I had found something, it turned out to be a dead end. I was starting to get desperate. I knew I had to find a way to stop Emily, but I didn't know how. I felt like I was running out of time, like the clock was ticking down to zero. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I received a call from the bank. They told me that Emily had cleaned out our account, that there was nothing left. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was sit there, staring at the phone in my hand. How could Emily do this to me? I thought we were a team, that we were in this together. But now it seemed like she was out to destroy me. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to come up with a plan. I knew I had to act fast, before Emily could do any more damage. But every time I thought I had a plan, I realized it wasn't going to work. As the day drew to a close, I realized I was going to have to do this on my own. I was going to have to fight for my life's savings, and for my dignity. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the battle ahead. But just as I was starting to feel like I had a plan, I received a visit from an unexpected guest. It was a woman, dressed in a business suit, with a briefcase in her hand. "Can I help you?" I asked, wondering who she was and what she wanted. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I'm a private investigator. I've been hired to look into your wife's activities." I felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was the break I needed. Maybe this woman could help me find out what Emily had done with our money. "What do you know?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. "I know that your wife has been embezzling money from your account," Sarah said. "I know that she's been using it to fund her own business ventures." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why?" I asked, trying to understand. "I'm not sure," Sarah said. "But I think it's because she's been feeling trapped in your marriage. She wants out, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants." I felt a surge of anger. How could Emily do this to me? I thought we were a team, that we were in this together. But now it seemed like she was out to destroy me. I knew I had to act fast. I knew I had to stop Emily before she could do any more damage. But how? Sarah seemed to sense my desperation. "Don't worry," she said. "I'm here to help you. We'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll make sure that Emily pays for what she's done." I felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was the break I needed. Maybe this woman could help me find out what Emily had done with our money, and maybe she could help me get it back. But just as I was starting to feel like I had a plan, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Emily. "You'll never find out what I've done," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "And even if you do, you'll never be able to prove it." I felt a surge of anger. How could Emily do this to me? I thought we were a team, that we were in this together. But now it seemed like she was out to destroy me. I knew I had to act fast. I knew I had to stop Emily before she could do any more damage. But how? I tried to keep my cool, but it was getting harder by the minute. "We'll see about that," I said, trying to sound confident. "I'll find out what you've done, and I'll make sure you pay for it." Emily just laughed. "You're so predictable," she said. "You think you can just waltz in here and fix everything? Newsflash, John, you're not as smart as you think you are." I felt a surge of anger, but I tried to keep it in check. I knew I had to stay calm if I was going to get through this. "I'll find out what you've done," I repeated. "And when I do, you'll be sorry." Emily just laughed again. "I'm shaking in my boots," she said. And with that, she hung up the phone. I was left standing there, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what was happening. I felt like my whole world was falling apart. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to process everything that had happened. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. As the day drew to a close, I realized I had to talk to someone. I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I decided to call my best friend, Mike. Mike was a lawyer, and I knew he'd be able to give me some advice. I told him everything that had happened, and he listened attentively. "I'm so sorry, John," he said when I finished. "I had no idea things were this bad. What can I do?" I asked, feeling desperate. "Well, first of all, you need to get a lawyer," Mike said. "Someone who specializes in embezzlement cases. And then you need to start gathering evidence. Get all your financial records, and see if you can find any patterns. And then..." Mike paused, thinking. "And then what?" I asked, feeling a surge of hope. "And then you need to confront Emily," Mike said. "You need to make her realize that you're not going to take this lying down. You need to make her know that you're going to fight for what's yours. I felt a surge of determination. I was going to do just that. I was going to fight for my life savings, and for my dignity. I was going to make Emily pay for what she'd done. The next few days were a blur of activity. I spent every waking moment gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and trying to come up with a plan. I was determined to make Emily pay, and I was going to do whatever it took to make that happen. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to feel like I was getting nowhere. I was getting frustrated, and I was starting to lose hope. Maybe Emily had won. Maybe she had gotten away with it. I was starting to feel like I was never going to get my life savings back. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I received a call from the police. "John, we need to talk to you about Emily," they said. My heart sank. What had she done now? I felt a surge of anxiety as I asked, "What's going on?" The police officer on the other end of the line hesitated before responding. "We've received a report that Emily has been involved in some suspicious activity. We need to ask you some questions." I felt a chill run down my spine as I asked, "What kind of suspicious activity?" The officer replied, "We can't disclose that information over the phone. Can you come down to the station and talk to us in person?" I agreed, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What had Emily done? Had she been involved in something illegal? I arrived at the police station and was greeted by a stern-looking detective. He introduced himself as Detective James and led me to a small interrogation room. "Mr. Smith, we've been investigating some irregularities in your wife's business dealings," he began. "We believe she may have been involved in some shady transactions." I felt my heart sink as I asked, "What kind of transactions?" Detective James leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "We're not sure yet, but we suspect she may have been embezzling funds from your joint account." I felt a wave of anger wash over me as I realized that my suspicions had been correct. Emily had been stealing from me. "What evidence do you have?" I demanded. Detective James pulled out a stack of documents and began to explain the evidence they had collected. I listened in stunned silence as he outlined the trail of transactions that Emily had made, using our joint account to fund her own business ventures. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she do this to me? The detective finished his explanation and asked me if I had any questions. I had a million questions, but I didn't know where to start. "What's going to happen to Emily?" I asked finally. Detective James leaned back in his chair. "We'll be bringing her in for questioning soon. Depending on the evidence, she may face charges of embezzlement." I felt a surge of satisfaction at the thought of Emily finally facing the consequences of her actions. But as I left the police station, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Emily was a cunning and ruthless woman, and I knew she would stop at nothing to protect herself. I wondered what she would do next, and whether I would be able to protect myself from her wrath. As I walked back to my car, I noticed a figure watching me from across the street. It was Emily, her eyes blazing with anger and hatred. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that she had been watching me, waiting for her chance to strike. I quickly got into my car and drove away, my heart racing with fear. I knew that I had to be careful, that Emily would stop at nothing to destroy me. I drove home, my mind racing with thoughts of what I could do to protect myself. But as I pulled into my driveway, I realized that I was not alone. Emily was standing on my porch, her eyes fixed on me with a malevolent glare. "You'll never take me down," she spat, her voice venomous. "I'll make sure you pay for what you've done." I felt a surge of fear as I realized that I was in grave danger. Emily was not going to go down without a fight, and I was her next target. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was racing with fear. I knew that I had to be careful, that Emily was unpredictable and capable of anything. I slowly got out of my car, trying not to make any sudden movements. "Emily, what are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily sneered at me, her eyes flashing with anger. I'm here to take care of you, she spat. You think you can just ruin my life and get away with it? Think again, John. I took a step back, trying to create some distance between us. But Emily was relentless, her eyes fixed on me with a fierce determination. You're going to pay for what you've done, she repeated, her voice dripping with malice. I knew that I had to get away from her, to find some way to protect myself. But my legs felt like lead, and I couldn't seem to move. Emily took a step closer, her eyes blazing with fury. I could see the hatred in her eyes, the desire to hurt me. And I knew that I was in grave danger. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. It was the sound of a car door opening, followed by the sound of footsteps. Emily's eyes flickered towards the sound, and for a moment, she seemed distracted. I took advantage of the distraction to turn and run, dashing towards the safety of my house. But as I reached the door, I realized that it was locked. I frantically searched for my keys, my heart racing with fear. And then I heard Emily's laughter, a cold and mirthless sound. You'll never escape me, she spat. I'll always find you. I spun around, my eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of Emily. But she was nowhere to be seen. Instead, I saw a figure emerging from the shadows, a figure that I recognized with a start. It was Sarah, the private investigator who had been helping me. She looked at me with a serious expression, her eyes locked on mine. John, we need to get out of here, she said. Now. I didn't need to be told twice. I followed Sarah to her car, my heart still racing with fear. As we drove away from the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was still out there, watching me. Waiting for her chance to strike. I looked over at Sarah, who was driving with a focused expression. What's going on? I asked, my voice shaking with fear. Sarah glanced over at me, her eyes serious. We have reason to believe that Emily is in deeper trouble than we thought, she said. She's been involved in some shady dealings, and we think she's in danger. I felt a surge of surprise. Danger? What did Sarah mean? But before I could ask any questions, Sarah's phone rang. She answered it, her expression growing more serious by the second. What is it? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Sarah hesitated, her eyes locked on mine. It's the police, she said. They've found something. Something big. I felt a surge of excitement, mixed with fear. What had the police found? And what did it have to do with Emily? I leaned forward, my heart racing with anticipation. What is it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's expression was grim. They've found evidence of Emily's involvement in a large-scale embezzlement scheme, she said. It looks like she's been using her business to launder money for some very shady characters. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I had suspected that Emily was up to something, but I had no idea it was this big. What kind of characters? I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. Sarah hesitated, her eyes locked on mine. We're not entirely sure yet, she said. But from what we've gathered so far, it looks like Emily's been working with some organized crime figures. They've been using her business to funnel money into the country, and then using it to fund their own operations. I felt a chill run down my spine. Organized crime. This was getting bigger by the minute. What does this mean for Emily? I asked, my voice shaking with fear. Sarah's expression was grim. It means she's in a lot of trouble, she said. The police are going to be looking for her, and if they catch her, she's going to be facing some serious charges. I felt a surge of panic. Emily was going to be in big trouble, and I had a feeling that she was going to stop at nothing to get out of it. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her eyes locked on the rearview mirror. "We can't stay in one place for too long. Emily's going to be looking for us, and if she finds us, we're in trouble." I nodded, my heart racing with fear. We had to get out of there, and fast. We drove for hours, the tension building with every passing minute. I knew that Emily was out there, looking for us, and I had a feeling that she was getting closer. Suddenly, Sarah's phone rang. She answered it, her expression growing more serious by the second. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah hesitated, her eyes locked on mine. "It's the police," she said. "They've found Emily's location. She's holed up in a motel on the outskirts of town." I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. We were going to catch Emily, and finally get to the bottom of this whole mess. "Let's go," I said, my voice firm. Sarah nodded, her eyes locked on the road. "We'll get there as fast as we can," she said. We drove for what felt like hours, the tension building with every passing minute. Finally, we arrived at the motel, a seedy-looking place on the outskirts of town. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as we pulled up to the room where Emily was staying. This was it. We were finally going to catch her. But as we approached the room, I realized that something was off. The door was open, and I could hear the sound of voices coming from inside. "Sarah, wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something's not right." But it was too late. Sarah had already pushed open the door, and we were staring into the barrel of a gun. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stared into the barrel of the gun. Emily was standing in front of us, a maniacal look in her eyes. "You'll never take me alive," she spat, her voice dripping with malice. But I just smiled. I knew that the game was over. The police had arrived, and Emily was surrounded. She had nowhere to go, and no way to escape. "You're finished, Emily," I said, my voice firm. "You've lost. You've been caught, and you're going to pay for what you've done." Emily's face contorted with rage, but I just kept talking. "You thought you were so smart, didn't you? You thought you could just steal from me, and get away with it. But you were wrong. You were so wrong." The police moved in, surrounding Emily and taking her into custody. I watched as they read her rights, and led her away in handcuffs. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed by a sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served. Emily had been caught, and she was going to pay for her crimes. As I watched her being led away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. I had been right all along. Emily was a thief, and a liar. And now, she was going to pay the price. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The police investigated Emily's crimes, and gathered evidence for the trial. I testified against her, telling the court about the emotional and financial toll that her actions had taken on me. And in the end, Emily was found guilty. She was sentenced to years in prison, and ordered to pay restitution to me and the other victims of her crimes. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a sense of closure. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. I had been vindicated, and justice had been served. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. I had been through hell, but I had come out on top. And as I looked back on the experience, I knew that I was stronger because of it. I had learned to stand up for myself, and to fight for what was rightfully mine. And I had learned that no matter what life threw at me, I could overcome it. I was a survivor, and I was proud of it. As I walked away from the courtroom, I felt a sense of peace. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. And I was finally free.